All right, everyone. I am so excited to introduce my next guest. Loved her in Savage Sam, Beach Blanket Bingo, and so much more, but all adored across the world as Judy Robinson in Lost in Space. Please welcome to the show, Marta Kristen. Hey.
Hey, how are you? It's so
Good.
good to be here, be with you in Michigan.
I'm excited to talk to you because I've always wanted to talk to you because I know you weren't born in Michigan. Well, an amazing story in itself, but I know you spent a lot of time in Michigan in your early years. I'm excited. I do want to say up front, while you meet 1,000 million people, I'm sure every month, we did meet. I One of my prized possessions is this Lost in Space cast photo. You were at the Motor City Comic Con, I think like 2011. And I know that not because I stalked, because I Googled it and I found a clip that was dated 2011. But the year before that, everyone else was at the Motor City Comic. I think it was like the year before. And then I remember you weren't there because when you were there the next year, I wasn't as organized with my autographs as I am now. And I'm running around. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" Because I'm like running around the house. I I, I got to get to the Comic Con. I'm getting picked up in like 2 minutes, and I can't find my Lost in Space photo. I got Judy Robinson's going to be there. I got to get this photo, and so I found it. So Angela, you, Bill, and Mark.
Mark, right,
Yeah.
right.
So I
Well,
don't
I'm
think.
glad I was able to do that for you. Yeah, I love conventions. I love meeting people. I always feel very cared about, and I'm interested in people. I want to know what they do, who they are, who their families are. I feel I get more than I give. It sounds corny but it's true. It's true.
No, I believe it. I've talked to a lot of folks. And do you have any like stories where someone shared something with you and they're like,
Oh yeah. There's one woman who I just have become very close friends with. And she had a terrible, terrible childhood. I mean, beatings, it was like Oliver or something, beatings all the time. And the only way that she found any kind of comfort was watching Lost in Space, because that was the family that she would have loved to have had. That's not uncommon, actually. I mean, most children are not beaten, but I have encountered people who have that issue, and I'm glad that we were able to do something for them that we gave them some idea of what a family is like. And it's interesting because she's so normal in many ways. I mean, and she says the reason is because she watched Lost in Space. I don't know whether that's the full truth, but that's how she talks about her great love of Lost in Space.
there's something about shows from like the 60s and early 70s that I don't know, just people I think have such an affinity towards. And it was such a kind of interesting period where the folks, Lost in Space, or maybe it would be the Brady Bunch, or like Leave It to Beaver, or like any of those, My Three Sons, where like people still, like, you bring them up, they just kind of light up. It's amazing because it's like when you think, it's like it was on for 3 years,
Yes,
like was it almost 50 years ago? It was like
it was 60 years ago. No,
60, no,
1965. Do you do the math?
75,
Oh
85,
yeah,
95,
yeah,
2009.
yeah,
Yeah,
50,
about
60, 60. It's been 60 years. I know,
unbelievable, right?
I
I mean,
know it is. And as we all know, time goes by very quickly, and we all live lives that we can't imagine we have done or have happened. Things have happened to us, and it's quite remarkable that we sometimes get through it, and with any luck, we continue to do so.
all right, so let's go back before before Lost in Space, and let's go before Michigan. I mean, it's like we could talk about now or later, but I know you're writing a children's book, but I feel like your full story, you need like a memoir and stuff like that. I mean, it's just amazing. When you were born in Norway, father was killed in the war, and then you ended up being adopted by a wonderful couple in Detroit, Michigan.
You bet. Yeah, my dad, my adopted father, taught at Wayne State University. He taught philosophy of education. Harold Soderquist, a good Swede. But yes, I was in my mother, my birth mother, had left me in the orphanage there when I was an infant, when I was just born. She was in Germany from Finland and had been ordered to work for a German officer, and And she was pretty and lively, but she was pregnant with me. She was so afraid that he would kill her. She immediately gave birth to me when she gave birth to me in her room. And then she and her friend took me to the hospital. And they put me in an underground orphanage because at that time, the Germans were kidnapping children and sending them back to Germany, to wealthy families. Lebensborn called. And so I was not adoptable in Norway because I was half German. My parents eventually adopted me. I only call them my parents because they were the only parents I ever had, and they were the best. They were good friends with the editor of the Detroit News. And he had heard about a child being adopted from this orphanage as an infant. And they were in their 50s already, early 50s, and had adopted a boy and decided that they wanted to adopt a girl, but everyone refused them because of their age. And so they contacted the orphanage in Norway, and it took my adopted mother, Bertha Soderquist, 2 years of red tape to get me to America. And you can imagine what a shock that was for all of us. But my mother said that they immediately knew who I was because when I got off the airplane, I walked like Charlie Chaplin, walking towards them, that kind of thing. I think the way I survived in the orphanage was to entertain. And so it just continued. And it never has stopped. I've recently been thinking about children who have to come to the United States or to another country and then translate all the time. You're always changing. You're always thinking of what are they saying? What are the words? What is their expression? Reading all of those things in order to understand. And of course, trying to learn the language quickly as possible. And I think that's what actors do. We read the language, we read someone else's language, and then we interpret what we read and then take it onto our own understanding and then present it. So I think it was a perfect choice for me.
So a show person from right off the plane. Is this your, how old at this point? Five-ish?
I was almost five.
So, okay. So how long did it take to fully learn the language and kind of just adapt? Because I imagine that at 5, you're pretty aware of where you were in the orphanage. And so it's kind of a shock, into this whole new world. How long did it take you to learn English? I mean, as a kid, probably that's a little bit of a benefit because you're more of a sponge, just in terms of being able to adapt fast.
Well, I think it took me 4 to 6 months. My father, my adopted father, was Swedish, and he would try to speak Swedish to me because Swedish is, very similar to Norwegian, but it's, it's a little bit different enough for me to hear it. And I would say, don't speak dum Norwegian to me. And so, that was my way of telling them, no, only speak English to me, because I so much wanted to be accepted, to, adapt to my new environment. It was, as a 5-year-old, never having had a family, except for Tante Marta, from whom I took my name, this was the gold at the end of the rainbow for me. It was really remarkable. I mean, I remember, the confusion. My mother would tell me that I cried in the taxi. And so I was crying and crying. They couldn't stop me from crying. This is from the airport. And so she had her little overnight bag, and she took out nail polish and she took out lipstick. And those were the first 2 words I learned: lipstick and nail polish. So girly. I'm a tomboy, but that was so girly. I loved it. And I mean, I'm both. And it was, that humors me because, I don't have pedicures or manicures, but I do love trying makeup on and doing different, design clothes and things like that.
What did you have memories? Do you get back to Michigan other than the Comic-Cons or anything? Or
I have gone back. I even went back to my old house that had been sold. My parents had 5 acres. I mean, it was idyllic in many ways for someone who loves being outside. I played softball in the summer and skied and sled in the winter. And we had trees. I climbed trees. And in fact, one of my great memories is we had a huge willow tree. I would sit underneath it, and it came all the way down to the ground, as they do in Michigan. I would sit there and I'd eat crackers, saltine crackers, I remember that, and read. And it was my own little home, my own little place to hide, my hideaway. My parents they enriched my education so much, and with books and lessons and theater. I did theater almost immediately, and dance. They knew just what I needed. We all need that kind of enrichment, and we're very lucky if we get it. We're very lucky. Nowadays, everybody seems to, for me, I'm sounding old now, but everybody seems to be on their screen. And I want to say, no, talk to each other, put it away. I'm guilty of it myself. So, bad.
Right. There's no longer that. I remember like either calling a friend or you'd call a girl and you have to go on the phone. And it was always so scary because now it's just with texting. It's like, it's easier, right? It's like,
right.
You got a Bumpy Cake, Fago, Verner's, like any, you got any like favorite Michigan
Verner's.
things?
I'm a Verner's drinker. Still, it reminds me of home.
The best, right? With vanilla ice cream in.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Amazing. You grew up in Farmington?
Farmington Hills. Well, now it's Farmington Hills.
Okay, that's where I grew up.
Really?
Hills. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Farmington Hills sounds fancier than Farmington.
Farmington Hills.
Yeah, Farmington Hills. I lived on Orchard Lake Road, 25340 Orchard Lake Road.
Okay, I was Drake Road, so just a couple miles.
Oh, yes. I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, 13 and Drake.
Oh my gosh. Wow, real close. We
just missed each other by decades.
Yes, by decades. You were just a speck in the universe at that time.
Oh, that's so funny. You did theaters in Birmingham and all the kind of Detroit Civic Theater. So you were real theater.
I was a theater geek. Yeah. I was a theater geek. I loved everything about it. I loved when somebody went up on stage so that I could just fill in the time. Oh, this is my time to shine, Oh no, I just had, I started a theater company, but we can talk about that later with a small group of people. Voted the best small theater company in LA by NPR. I've always done theater. I do theater now. Love it. Love it. I think young actors, I always tell them, do whatever you can. Get up there or do it. If it's a small part, big part, whatever, do it. Just be there and watch other people work and listen to the director and see what they're always adjusting things. And that's your education.
I've done stand-up comedy for quite a while.
Oh, yikes.
But I think like what's interesting for both is that, like what you learn from both is the live reaction of someone, and you can start to really understand, okay, if I do this will happen. You can then start to do things knowing how to get those reactions. It's like when I would do stand-up, and I would always call it audience manipulation, but I think that's a bad way to say it, because like I would know, like, okay, I'm going to say this, they're going to laugh, and I'm going to take a quick drink because I know I'll have time to drink. You learn that from being in front of people, and it's like a different kind of rush. And
when you've got them, as you say, when you've got them. You're not supposed to break the fourth wall in theater, but when they're with you. There's an energy, sort of a unity of a kind. When you're telling the truth in the character you're doing, that they're with you. Otherwise, you hear coughing and feet and rustling of chairs. And it's heaven for me when they're just still. And I've written a few pieces, and I know that they're understanding exactly what lesson, if that sounds so important, but the emotion that I'm feeling, they understand, and they're empathizing with it. I can go on and on.
No, I think it's amazing, because it's the other lesson you learn which is what you were describing, as I would just reiterate, as reading the room. When you can feel it, you can understand how you're like become connected with everyone there, and that, okay, this is going to make them laugh, this will make them cry, it's an interesting thing because you can take that with you. And it's like when you're other places, you can kind of feel the energy, and like it's a really cool thing to be able to do.
Well, I've done a lot of improv, and I was studied with Gary Austin, who founded the Groundlings. I studied with him for years. I think everyone, not just actors or entertainers, should do improv because you learn how to listen. Again, it's like translating when I was a child. You're watching, you're trying to learn from them, and you're always keeping the conversation moving. So the idea of not allowing the no to come in. The answer is always yes. I remember I had a shirt that said QUI, oui, in French, which means yes. That was my improv shirt. And improv is fun. It makes you think. It makes you listen. It gives you ideas about other people. You do character work. You see people on the street all the time. Every man does. And you see somebody and you say, "Oh, that's so interesting. How would I take that as a myself? How do I take that on as my, who I am?" I mean, I do things like a boxer, right? With boxer, I'm going, an old boxer. Mom, I'm going to do it. That kind of thing. And it's sad. It's sad in a way that somebody has, but the same idea is that he still has hope. Anyway, those are the things that give me so much joy.
I love it. I've been thinking lately about taking improv classes. Like I felt like I developed a little bit of it talking to the audience, doing stand up and like kind of freeing yourself to like just be in that moment and not overthink the reactions and stuff. But I've wanted to like take real improv. But you're right, it's the greatest skill you can have. I'd say either stand up and or improv, because it's one of those things where even in corporate, if you're doing a presentation, you're talking to the boss. I always used to joke. It's like, they're like, you talk to the CEO. I worked at Little Caesars, another Detroit thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, you talked to the CEO? I'm like, yeah. You weren't nervous? I'm like, I bombed at Club Bart's in front of 30 people at like 1 a.m. Like, there's nothing worse than that's ever going to throw me. It's like, no, I didn't have a problem talking to him. That kind of thing. So your chosen family, we say, like your mom and dad, and they moved to California. How did they decide to sabbatical or something? Like, how did they choose California? Because this is like important for your story, right? If it had been somewhere else, who knows what we'd be talking about.
True. Sliding doors. My mother had a sister here in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades, actually. My father wanted to write a book about Kierkegaard, the great Danish philosopher. So he said, well, I can use the USC library. That's perfect because they have a great library, a philosophy library. So we got into our 1955 Ford black and white station wagon with red interior. I will never forget that car. I love that car. Wish I could find one. Wish they would remake it. But it was the station wagon, and I slept the whole way in the back. They put all the stuff on top of the car because I was so sad to leave all my friends in Michigan. And I was 15 at the time, so you can imagine. So this was sort of a replay in a way, 10 years later, of leaving everything and starting new. And then I got here, and we found a little place in Santa Monica and stayed there. I got discovered by James Harris, the producer of Lolita. I mean, the typical Hollywood story of being discovered. I was at a deli in Santa Monica with a friend, and I saw some people watching me. So I turned it on, as I was wont to do. So one of the men came over, and he was James Harris, the producer of Lolita, and said, "Are you interested in acting?" And I said, "Oh, I've never been interested in anything else." And that was the truth. He took my number. He said he was producing this movie with Kubrick and Stanley Kubrick. He said, "I think you should read the book, and your parents should read the book." And my parents did read the book. I read the book. I thought it was hilarious and wonderful. My parents said, no, but he got me an agent, a very good agent. I started working almost immediately. I was very lucky.
So he just saw you. That's amazing. It's just, I need to get out more, man. It's
it's synchronicity. It's kismet. It's whatever you want to call it. But it happened to me a couple of times. I sound like, tooting my own horn, but it did happen to me a couple of times with talent agents and things. They always were looking for talent, pretty young things who had a certain energy, I guess you would call it. And as I said, I started working right away. Proud of a lot of the work I did, the My Three Sons, and you were talking about, the different shows. Alfred Hitchcock, who he directed one of them. I did all the shows. Greatest show.
You made all the rounds, yeah.
Except for combat. I never would have liked to.
Funny, I was not aware of that show, and I was just editing a show, and the guy talked for 2 minutes about combat.
Really?
Yeah, it's so funny. All right, so I have a note, and this is of note because Angela was in it. You auditioned for Sound of Music, so one of your early ones, but you didn't get it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because the video I said that you were too sexy for the role, so they passed on you.
That's I think so. I think so. When I look at myself at that age, I think my agent told me that I was too pretty or too sexy or something. I don't know. And also probably too German. That would have come out, and I don't know. You don't know why you don't get it, but I thought I sang, I am 16, going on 17. And and I was a singer and a dancer. I did all those things. And I think I would have been perfect for it myself. No, it's all right. I would have loved to have done that because that is one of the great movies of all time. And it still hurts. Woohoo.
I didn't mean to bring up anything to bring
sorry.
you pain. I'm sorry.
The pain.
The other thing, as I was going, one of the joys of obviously Lost in Space, that's in my heart, but getting to kind of dive into your full career and kind of learn. Savage Sam, it never even occurred to me that they made a sequel to Old Yeller.
Oh.
It's like all you ever hear about Old Yeller is like, then they shoot the dog at the end, right?
Oh,
and then they're like, oh, they made a sequel?
Sequel? Why? I didn't even know it was a sequel when I was doing it. I loved it because I was outside. There were horses in Farmington when I was growing up. There was a barn that I used to go to, and I would clean the hooves and brush the horses down so I could get a free ride on a horse. Please let me ride. Every girl's dream, I think. And I tried to earn enough money to buy a horse, and I started a local newspaper. It was the kind of thing where you wrote, you wouldn't know this, but you wrote on with a special kind of ink, and then you copied it on gel. It laid onto the gel, and then you just kept one piece of paper after another onto it. And I would, advertise, and get 35 cents from somebody to advertise a neighbor or a quarter, whatever it was they offered. I think I made $35. And then I finally said, no, it's not going to happen. It's going to take me, I'll be 100 before I get enough for a horse. It was quite extraordinary to be a part of that lifestyle. So back to Savage Sam. So here I am. I've got horses. I'm outside. I'm riding horses. I'm playing, a Western in a Western, which I loved. And I got to work with the amazing cowboys. Oh my gosh. They were trouble. And they would come in on Mondays after a long weekend, and they would be bruised or bandaged up. They would get into bar fights. But man, they wrangled those horses so beautifully. And one man showed me, one stuntman, wrangler, showed me how he would be riding by and he picked me up and threw me on the back. Took my arms and I got onto behind him as the horse was moving. It was quite something. And I had the best time doing Savage Sam. And of course I love dogs. So that old guy, the spotted, some hunting dog. I just loved it. I loved being with all these people. And Norman Toback directed it, and he ended up directing other movies that had animals in it, like whales or Clipper. No,
Flipper.
Yeah, Flipper. Thank you. I knew I'd get there some
Was
point.
it Brian Keith in that also?
He was.
Yeah.
Brian Keith was in it. Slim Pickens. Oh God, I had so much fun. So much fun. Tommy Kirk. Yeah, it was a good time. A good time.
Old school Disney. And then I imagine another good time with Beach Blanket Bingo. You got to play a mermaid.
Yeah. Another outdoor movie where I was in the water a good part of the time, and it was November. And our waters in California aren't particularly warm. They might be a little warmer now, but they weren't warm in the 60s. And when there was one time when I had to be out in the water, and there was a huge rock behind me, and it's cold, and the surge is taking me into the shoreline and near the rock, and then back again. And all I have on are pasties and a bathing suit bottom. I'm supposed to be looking around, so interested in everything and all the human beings on the shore, all the young people, and I'm freezing. And the director yells out, "Smile, smile." Yeah, and they did have someone in a wetsuit behind the rock just in case, but I'm a very good swimmer. So I'd been a surfer. So, and the movie was filled with surfers. Johnny Fain, Mickey Dora. I mean, the famous surfers were all extras on that movie. Oh my God, I had so much fun. I mean, they were allowed and sort of, well, they were raunchy, but I didn't care. You hung out at the beach and that's what you got.
This was Frankie Avalon's last beach movie. This is the 5th beach movie. Annette Funicello, Linda Evans was in this, Don Rickles, Paul Lynn, Buster Keaton. Quite the old school cast.
I could not believe I was with Buster Keaton because he was one of the great pioneers of film. He just, all I could do was just sit and stare at him because he was is such a legend, you know. Being with a legend like that to me was such an honor. I couldn't believe I was there with this Buster Keaton. He was, he just sort of was so relaxed and, didn't been around for so long that he didn't mind just sitting there and just playing his role, which wasn't a great role for him, but it was just an honor.
Really, really cool. You mentioned Alfred Hitchcock. I know I talked to Billy Mooney. He mentioned Bang Your Dad, and he told me he wasn't too fond of Alfred Hitchcock. Shared a story, but it's funny that it's cool that you guys were both in that together. Jumping ahead out of time, when you talk about legends, so you were in a movie, Battle Beyond the Stars, a Roger Corman film, which had as its designer James Cameron.
Oh yes. And George Peppard.
Yep, Richard Thomas, John Boyd.
Yeah. It was great. It wasn't, the part I played was sort of the leader of my people, and I loved the idea of being that. But it wasn't flashy at all. It was sort of subdued, and that I was his girlfriend. And I think he would have rather have had Blythe Danner. No, not Blythe Danner. The blonde with the very sexy outfit on. Yeah, I don't remember her name, but anyway, it was so much fun to be, and an honor again, to be a part of Corman's first big movie. Put a lot of money into it, and we did. Well, it was blue screen at the time, but we did a lot of green screen, and it was interesting, a good experience in many ways. Because, but I had forgotten that James Cameron was the set designer. It makes sense.
I was interviewing Gail Ann Hurd, and I remember she mentioned that movies when I saw it. I'm like, oh, that's that Roger Corman movie that James Cameron was on.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you did a lot of shows, like you said. So My Three Sons, you were on My Three Sons 3 times.
Right.
I found the first one.
Yes.
Where you were a character named Pig, which is such a weird name.
Well, Piggy.
Piggy.
That was my nickname, Piggy.
Yeah.
And I was a tomboy, so that was perfect. If I remember right, I had a crush on Robbie, and so I decided to get dressed up. And I come walking in, and he's saying, "Here, hand me a wrench. Do this." Here I am. I'm all dressed. Here I am. And that he didn't pay any attention to me just offended me terribly. That was fun. He was such a nice guy. Don Grady, adorable. Found out that we had a lot in common. He loved music. I love music, but we never dated or anything like that. But I would have liked it, I think.
The scene that you were describing, and he's kind of oblivious to you. It's like you say, it's a dress ratchet head. Was ratchet head a insult back then?
I guess.
I don't know. I just thought it was the funniest thing. I was like, all right, with a, I can imagine the writers like come up with something that sounds like something we
Right.
could say on TV.
Yeah. And I guess, writing, that's another thing about acting and language is that comedians, some words are very funny. Some words don't have it. But ratchet, you're right. Ratchet's a good one. Nurse Ratchet, you get what it is.
Leave It to Beaver. You were Eddie Haskell's girl. The interesting thing is I was watching the episode again. It was directed by Hugh Beaumont.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Oh my gosh. Wow. I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't remember it. I knew it when I did it, of course, but it was so long ago. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for a little bit of information. Hugh Beaumont. Wow. He actually directed it. Wow.
I know, right? So what else? You're on everything.
I will tell you that later on, Tony and I did a show together, a two-parter. Do you have that on your notes about?
I do. The 11th hour. You did the 11th hour together.
And then when first it was Dr. Kildare, and it was about abortion, about teen marriage, about the difficulties of both. And that was when you couldn't even say pregnant, could barely say pregnant on television. I think it was 1964. It was a remarkable show because it really showed how difficult parenting is and how alone you feel in that circumstance. You're not with your peer group. You're all of a sudden a parent, and a parent has, as you know, just enormous responsibility, and it's time consuming, and everything centers around, or should center around, the child. And you're still a child yourself in many ways. So it was, it showed all of that. And that I was so desperate in the beginning that I tried to abort myself. And that's how I go to the hospital. It's timely throughout, since the 60s or before that, throughout all women's experiences of having pregnancy. I loved being pregnant. I thought I was the most blessed person in the world with my daughter. And when she was born, I never had felt that kind of love. It's not, romantic love is one thing. Love for a child is completely different. It's just, it takes you over. But I was ready for it. And I think you have to have a certain maturity. And I think, teenagers do get pregnant and they decide to have a child but their lives, and there's so many that have the strength to go forward and get an education or whatever, or stay with the child. And anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But it was an important show. I was very, very happy to be a part of that. It was called 4 Feet in the Morning, directed by a very wonderful director and well-known Jack Smite. I was very proud of the work in that. Very proud.
Were you impressed? I knew it when you said.
Yeah, I was. You know that too. Jeff, what else do you know? Uh-oh.
I know everything. Some stuff I will keep secret.
Oh, thank you. I didn't have to pay you, did I?
No. It's all good. It's all positive karma from our meeting back in 2011. All right, let's talk about Irwin Allen. Let's learn to speak English. Let's talk about Irwin Allen and his recruitment of you for Lost in Space. And let's talk Lost in Space for a little bit. So.
Okay. Well, I have to start with, I didn't want to do it. The show. I said, I'm going to pursue theater. I want to go to New York. I want to, theater is my life. And then I was married at the time to a psychologist, and he sort of withdrew his affection towards me because he thought I was a fool not to do it. And Irwin called me all the time for like 2 weeks. Hello, Marta. When are you going to sign up? Come on, you're the one. I think it's because when I interviewed with him, I wore a bright pink suit. Go figure, I never wear pink. And great big gold earrings. And we had a wonderful, funny meeting. Didn't audition. He had seen my work. He had seen my work, in fact, on The Greatest Show on Earth with Jack Palance, and loved what I did. So he said, I want that girl. I want that girl. I ended up saying, all right, but you have to give me some storylines. I need to work. I need to be, I'm not just going to, I don't want to be just in a lineup of people, of family. And he said, oh, we have so many ideas for you. You and Major West, Judy and Major West are going to get married. You'll have a child. We'll have a whole storyline on them and how they survive in this, being lost. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. Yeah, okay. And then I started, and I thought the first year was really good in black and white. And then the Will and the robot and Dr. Smith took over. And it was that was the year of Laugh-In, of Batman, of Bang, Boom, whatever. And the show changed, and the nature of the show changed, and going into color, that changed everything. It became sort of a cartoon, a moving cartoon, and a life cartoon. I thought, well, it's all right. I mean, how lucky am I? I really did have to say to myself every morning, count your blessings, Marta, have gratitude. And because you're doing something that most people are not, most actors would love to do. And so that's what I did. I stayed there. I enjoyed myself. I learned so much from Jonathan about being on set and about how to treat people on set. He was not at all like his character. He was funny and he spoke a bit like that, but he said that was just affected, If someone asked him if he was British, and he said, no, just affected. And that was the truth. He treated people, he knew everybody's name on set. It's such a lesson for others. He recognized that without them, we are nothing. And that it was an ensemble. And without an ensemble, man, you're in, what, creek. So he was kind and he was giving. He knew everybody's wife, he knew their names, he knew their children, he knew their birthdays. I mean, that's quite a feat. And
it's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. And they loved him. They loved him, and I loved him. And we all loved him. Oh God, as I said, he taught me so much. And he was on set all the time. You didn't have to call for him. He was there. And he knew his lines. He said, Marta, he just, come in, know your lines, know your place on, know where you stand and do it. I did. But you also, he was teasing me because he knew that there was a lot more to it than that. I'll just tell you my favorite episode, which you might be asking me, and that is The Keeper, with Michael Rennie, who I had the maddest crush on from films I had seen him in. And I was able, and Jonathan and he were very good friends. So I was able to sit between them and listen to their banter. It was like a, ping pong, tennis, and back and forth, and with their storytelling, and they're laughing. And they were pleased that I was sitting between them too.
Was it a hard shift? Because you're part of this show that you agreed to be on, which you didn't want to be on at first, and the black and white season. So it's season 1, where it's a more serious show. It's more Swiss Family Robinson, right? And then Batman comes, like you mentioned, it kind of ruins a bunch of shows. The Munsters, I think, took a hit too, because the black and white, they stayed black and white, and it was like all of a sudden it's color and this craziness, right? You got to face off against Batman later in Family Feud, but we can get to that later.
Yes.
But and then you have this shift, and I know you've talked about it, where like your character wasn't as used as much as you would have liked, and because they shifted it to the Dr. Smith, and Will Robinson and Robot Show, and like, what was it about those three that created this shift? Was it just those are like the fans were just going crazy over them, or was it like the writers were like liking that combination and they just weren't as good at working in? Because I've read also like June Lockhart, Maureen, your mom on the show, Maureen Robinson, never even had like a show that was focused on her per se. Like,
Yeah.
so it was like they definitely only focused on these characters from 2 to 3, but it seemed like there was so much to go on that they could have tapped into?
Oh, I was told by someone who was in the know at 20th that they were planning on doing much more for Mark and myself and Bill and Angela in the fourth year. And that would have been wonderful. But yeah, June and Guy, they were the stars of the show. They both had done enormous amounts of work, and they should have been given the starring roles. And of course, it was difficult for them. I think that part of it, what happened was that, you mentioned that it was easy to write for him. Jonathan wrote a lot of his own lines. He would get a script and he would rewrite it. And he always ended up, I learned this, ended up as the last person talking in a scene. So they had to end up a close-up on him. Now, you would think that that's not a very nice thing to do. But, he was just protecting himself. He was very much afraid that the villain that he played in the first year was going to be eventually knocked off. And that was probably true. So he became the villain, you hate to love, and sort of did this Martita Hunt voice and oh, so afraid of everything.
Yeah. The pain. Yeah.
The pain. And, he developed that. And so he was easy to write for. He had a strong character that where all the alliterations that he used could be were funny and smart. And in fact, I understood that some of the teachers who in grade school would ask the kids the next day, well, what does such and such mean? And it was an alliteration that Jonathan had used, and they would yeah. So it was useful in many ways. For me, I was having a difficult marriage. I was married much too young. So my attentions sort of were divided, and my career was not the number one it probably should have been, because when Lost in Space did end, I was given multiple opportunities to do other shows. And instead I got pregnant and was just happy to be away from it for a while. Yeah, it was a disappointment. It was definitely a disappointment, because Mark and I had we had a really interesting chemistry in the show. Even though we didn't do a lot, we had looks and we had, just touching of the hands, but you knew that there was a flirtation there. And Mark was funny, and he was just a delight to work with. I would go out to lunch with him a lot, and we never had a romance, but it was a flirtation, definitely. And that showed, I think, on camera. Oh, I miss him very much. We would do conventions and together. Most of the conventions we were together. And if we weren't getting any business, he'd stand up and he'd call them in. Hey, come over here. And then people felt like intimidated that they should. Oh, we better go and talk. And then they'd talk and he'd talk, and pretty soon they were buying stuff. And it was Mark. Mark just had this amazing ability to connect with people. I'm a little shyer than he is, and so I would never do that. But he was great.
It's funny as you kind of say that. Like, I remember when they were all at the convention the year before I met you. I was talking. He spent some time. I remember him telling me, he's like, "Oh, we're gonna do a reunion. We got to work it out with Jonathan Harris." I remember him like being excited about it, and like kind of popped in my head as you were saying that.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what he did. And he was amazing. Just I love him, still love him. And Evelyn, his wife, was the perfect match for him, because he had married a couple of times before. I think they might have been, what would be the word? They were exciting. And not that his marriage to Evelyn wasn't, but more exciting than I think you would want. And Evelyn calmed him down. She gave him this sense of peace. And she's beautiful, beautiful woman. And they raised a son together, and they just, Anyway, yes, Mark, say a prayer for him every day.
May his memory be a blessing.
Yes, indeed.
Then your siblings, Bill Mooney and Angela Cartwright. Do you guys do conventions now together as 3 Lost in Space kids?
Well, Bill doesn't like to fly, and Angela has moved to Texas. So it's little old me, little old lonely me. I go to, I try and be all of them. Not really. I couldn't possibly be. Once in a while, we do a show together here in Los Angeles. Once in a while, I see Bill, and he's a wonderful guitarist. I love to watch him play. I'll go watch him do, at some club somewhere.
He's really good. He has a new album out not too long ago, and there's I found a clip of you and him singing, him playing guitar. Even at that age, he was really good on guitar.
I know. Sloop John B. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know how that song came about. I knew the song, but I didn't know Bill. I hadn't realized Bill knew it. So maybe that, being that I knew it and he knew it, they said, okay, we'll do that one. And it was around a campfire. So it was lovely. It was quite lovely.
Also, trivia of note, John Williams was the composer of your theme song.
You hear his music in Steven Spielberg's that graduated into a Spielberg movie. And da, 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 da. That kind of music that he played for mother and father when, they were talking to each other. And you can hear it. You can hear it in the Raiders, for instance, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I met him at a baggage claim, I think at the airport in LAX, Los Angeles airport. And he actually came over to me. I didn't know, frankly, they hadn't kept up with him. So I didn't know what he looked like. He said, I'm John Williams. I said, oh my God. I said, yes, Johnny. And he laughed. And he said, well, you're Marta Kristen. I said, yes. And he said, you look good. And I said, well, thank you. He said, thank you. And then his, group called him over. But I thought, wow, what a nice occurrence. It was lovely.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Really cool.
I saw Toto recently at a yacht rock concert, and one of the lead singers of Toto is wearing a jersey and it says Williams. And so I looked it up later because I'm like, it turns out it's John Williams' son.
No,
yeah.
Really? Toto?
As far as I know. No, I don't.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow.
I think, all right, so here's another Danger Will Robinson. That catchphrase from the show was only actually ever said one time. It was usually danger, danger.
Oh,
and
right.
Like, no, I can't say because you can only trust what you read. And then you tell me if this is true. June Lockhart had the biggest parking spot because sometimes she would drive a fire engine. Does that even make sense?
I don't remember her driving a fire engine. I think she had a big Cadillac though. And I did go to her house and see fire hats. And I don't remember. I think she had an old fire engine, just, an antique one. And I dated her stepson, Lance Lindsay. And his father was an architect, her husband. And Lance and I went up to San Francisco with them and had a great time. We stayed with the Zeller box, the famous paper fortune family. Anyway, it was, so I knew June a little bit before I did the show, before we even knew that we were going to do a show together.
That is amazing. What are you up to these days?
Okay. Well, my house burnt in the fire, completely destroyed, and my daughter and my granddaughter's houses as well. So I drove to Florida. A little over a year ago, I met someone who, after my husband died, this was 8 years later, after he died, I thought, that's it. We were together 43 years and I would never, ever, ever be with anybody else. But I went to a grief group in Florida, and the head of the grief group, Bob Ginsberg, I just was so taken with him. He went around to all these people who had passed, and siblings and husbands and wives, and many people who had lost their children. And because he had lost his child and his wife, but that he wasn't carrying this heaviness about him. He was carrying this feeling of hope. And that's what he was giving to other people. When after the fire, I drove to Florida because he invited me to come and stay with him. And his daughter and son and her husband were living with him at the time. So I drove my little Prius to Florida. It was an interesting experience. I liked it. Didn't listen to much radio, but I just listened to the road, and I began to understand the etiquette of truck drivers, and it was extraordinary. And I was seeing the country, looking and zoning in on certain spaces. And while I was driving, of course, I was careful. I was keeping my distance from the truck drivers because they didn't want you too close to them. And of course, anyway, it was I arrived there. I stayed for a couple of months, but I realized how much I missed my girls. I said to Bob, look, I think we can have an ongoing relationship, bi-coastal relationship, which is what we have. Came back to California and found a little place here in Venice. But I lost so many things. You can't go back. That's the problem. You can't say, as Lady Macbeth says, you just can't redo it. And you can't take it back. Although I shouldn't quote her because she's not particularly a person I want to personify. But seriously, I was in a lot of PTSD. I only had 20 minutes to grab stuff, grab some jewelry. I grabbed some boxes that my parents had gotten in China and a few clothes, and that was it. And I forgot a book that I had just finished the mock book of. And that you said earlier on that I should do an autobiography. That is my autobiography. It's called Birgit's Dream. And Birgit is my birth name, Birgit Rusanen. My dream at 3 was to have a family and to have a home and to be treated with love and kindness and cared about and held and read to and be safe, all the things that children need. So that's my autobiography, really. But as I said, my mock book I had just finished. I didn't take that with me. I thought I was going back. The fire seemed far away at the time, although the sky was beginning to fill with smoke. But I thought I was going back. And so I didn't back it up with iCloud, bad, but I didn't. And it was stupid of me. But I was so much into the process of writing and doing the drawings in the book and saying which was going to go where. And it's a very short version of a short story. I had all of the drawings done. I have some of it on my phone. So I'm going to redo it again. There's no reason why I shouldn't. I'm almost settled here. And so once I feel that, I can sit down and really start working on it. And I did a movie for my friends, Michiganders, who I adore, Tom and Mary McLaren. It's called Ralph's Perfect Christmas, and it's PERFEKT. It's quirky, to say the least. I play a recruiter, a job recruiter, and the main character, played by Tom, comes in to interview for a job, and it's like sort of a Monty Python-esque, where you start here close up, and then you back up, and you see this big table, and he's sitting at the very end, and I'm just, who cares? I'm powerful. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be interviewing him. And I ask him all the different questions that I have to ask him, and he can't do anything that I ask him because it's a tech company, right? And he knows nothing about technology. And anyway, I'm not a nice person to him. But the movie itself is it's a dark comedy. It's funny. It's also it has it's a thriller. It has a little bit of a horror feeling to it. It's about this man who wants to have a perfect Christmas for his family and what he does to seek it out. And Tom plays that. And Tom is a wonderful actor. I saw him in a film short that I think was up for or was considered Oscar material. He was brilliant in it. When I saw that, it knocked my socks off. And I said, oh, God, if you do anything, because Mary was, in distribution, film distribution at 20th. She was one of the top women in Hollywood. And so when she retired, she said, let's produce a movie. And so they found Ralph's Perfect Christmas. They were so thrilled to be producing it and Tom acting in it. And I said, oh, I hope I can do something in it, please. And they said, yes, we have something for you. And I just was knocked my socks off to be working with them because they're very, very close. And as I said, they're Michiganders, which makes a difference because I have found is that you have that kind of Midwestern upbringing. It's caring about one another and watching out for each other's feelings and being nice and not mean, being considerate. They're such dear, dear friends. Don't forget, it's Ralph's Perfect Christmas, and I think you will love it. It's, as I said, it's quirky and fun, but it's R-rated, so it's a great movie.
Can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing the story about. I'm so sorry that you lost everything. I can't even imagine in my head. But definitely finish that book. It's
oh yeah. Oh, I wanted to say about Robert Ginsburg. His group is Forever Family. When I've gone to the retreats, now I help him. I try to anyway, just set things up. People go in there for a 3-day retreat and they're just so in such agony and they come out feeling hope. It's the communality, not only the communality of the loss, it's also that they understand that it's not over. It's not over. And he has a great show. And I try and participate, a podcast, I try and participate in those. But Forever Family, it's so uplifting and I adore him. So he's kind, he's good, he's charismatic, but mainly he's been through terrible times. So he's even lost his house in a hurricane in Florida. I mean, he is to me the epitome of what we all need to be to each other. And I feel how you are. And that is good, kind, and thoughtful and caring. That's what I wanted to say.
It's so great to hear you that the universe brought you guys together.
And love it as senior time is interesting. It's very, very different. I could go on about it, but that's a whole other program about mature love. But it's good. It's interesting, and it has given me, in many ways, a new perspective and a new lease. So
that's amazing. I love that. Hug.
Hug. Oh, what is that?
Oh, yeah, I can never do that.
I can't do that either.
My hand doesn't work that way.
I've used my hands so much in painting because I'm a painter, and I use my hands so much that they're so bent. I've broken my fingers and playing volleyball. I've done all kinds of. So I can't do that either.
Do you make Bob when you guys are together? Do you go, oh, is there a Lost in Space marathon on? I guess we have to.
No, I don't do that. But he is watching the Alfred Hitchcock shows right now because I did 2 of them. But he's only in the third or fourth, I think, or 7 years of them. So anyway,
it's fine.
I wouldn't make him. I mean, what if he didn't like it? No, he wouldn't tell me. I know that.
What's not to like? It's a beloved show.
It is. I think he would find it amusing. And I think he would. Well, he tells everybody that I'm with Marta Kristen. You ever watch Lost in Space? So he is proud. He's proud of me. That's very important.
That is very important. Let's finish on one last thing just to tie in something I mentioned. I was disappointed to see that when you went up against Batman and Family Feud that you didn't beat them. They beat you guys.
I know. I think that, and June taught me how to play Killer Scrabble. And June and Guy. I mean, they were the game people of all time. So yeah, I went in there thinking, oh, this is a cinch. But no, it wasn't. Such is life.
I know. But just so you know, all 3 of your Family Feuds against Batman, Gilligan's Island, and Hawaiian Eye are all on YouTube. Yeah, the full episodes. Yeah, so if you ever want to check those out.
For sure. Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. I'm so tech unsavvy, I'm a nerd. I watch things like Nova. When I went to Florida, I was trying to get Bob's grandson to watch all these programs with me. Secrets of the Dead. And he said, no, no, I've got my whatever virtual thing, and I'm just looking around and playing tennis or whatever. And I said, oh, I'm just not going to get him into being interested in what I'm, fascinated with, and that the planet Earth and things like that. But there are shows, man, that are, my favorite show this last year was The Penguin. I
haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that.
Oh, Colin Farrell. The reason I watch it is because Colin Farrell is one of my favorite actors. And oh, man. And it's written by women and produced by women, directed by women. Even though it's a violent, very violent story, you understand the reasons for the main characters being so awful, being so evil, really. But you get a glimpse of that, and they open up that door, and it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Marta, you're amazing.
You're amazing, Jeff.
No arguments. We're both amazing.
We're both amazing.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
So much fun. So much fun. And hello to my Michiganders and everybody else. This was fun. Really fun. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for saying yes. All right.
My pleasure, as I would say.